How do you buy a house in Pennsylvania? That's what I'm going to tell you about all in this video. I'm Rob Lawrence of VRA Realty, based out of Westchester, Pennsylvania. I've been doing this for about 8 years. I've sold over 200 homes. I run a team of 6. I'm a real estate investor, so I buy houses myself. So I know a little bit about it, and I'm going to teach you in this video, step by step, how you buy a house in Pennsylvania. We're going to go through this flow chart, and we'll go through with it on the screen so it's nice and easy to follow along. And at the end, I'm even going to tell you how I help people make a lot of money when they buy a house through a special technique. So that's going to be at the end if you stick around. All right, let's go, baby. So let me briefly outline the steps, and then we're going to dive into each little one so that we can get more information and I can explain it. So first thing you're going to do is contact a realtor, find a right realtor. You're going to get pre-approved for a loan, find a house, make a deal, put down your deposit check, begin your mortgage, do inspections, go through appraisal, title is going to be running, loan's going to get approved, use and occupancy in a lot of townships is going to be a thing, your homeowner's insurance and utilities. You're going to do a final walkthrough and then closing. From making a deal to closing is typically 30 to 40 days. That's the basic process. There's obviously sometimes more to it. There's obviously sometimes things that fall outside of this, or not every step happens, but this is the basic steps. So the first thing I want to say is there's a lot of realtors, and the one that you select can really make a big difference in your transaction. There's probably about 10% of realtors that do about 70% of the business. You know, it's kind of like that 80-20 rule that you see. There's a lot of part-time realtors, a lot of realtors only do a couple deals a year. So you want to look at how many deals per year is a realtor doing. I'd say an average realtor is doing an average full-time realtor is doing 6 to 12 deals a year. My team personally, we're going to do about 100 deals this year. So it can vary. Of course, you know, it's based on personality, specialty, and where that realtor really operates. You can find a realtor through a recommendation from a friend. You can find one on YouTube like me. If you're in the Philadelphia suburbs, I can help you there. You know, you can look at reviews. I think reviews are really important. Not too hard to find a realtor. I think selecting the right one for you, you might want to interview 2 or 3. Step number 2 is getting pre-approved for a loan. So talking to a loan officer is basically how you're going to get pre-approved. Your realtor may have some recommendations, and you can also Google them and all that kind of stuff. But I personally like to work with people that I know, that I've done many transactions with in my area. And as a realtor, I usually have recommendations based on what type of buyer, what type of house they're buying. When you're getting pre-approved for a loan, once you talk to a loan officer, you're going to fill out the application typically. That is going to tell you how much house you can afford, how much your closing costs are going to be. You don't always need 20% down. You can go as low as 3% down on some conventionals, 3.5% on some FHA. So it just depends. A VA loan, I believe you go 0% down. Step number 3, finding the house. You got the realtor, you got pre-approved. Now it's time to find a house. So once you got the pre-approval, your realtor is going to look at that with you and go, okay, here's how much you're approved for. Let's set up a search. They're going to go into the MLS, which is the multiple listing service, and set up a search for you. That is going to show you all the options that meet your price, location, etc. For me, I set that up, and then it's going to automatically email my clients. They're going to take a look at those houses, tell me which ones they want to go see. I book that showing for them. At a convenient time, we go and see the house. We look around, see if we like it. I'm trying to check out the mechanicals. If it's the right fit, then you're going to move on to the next step. It's time to make a deal. And I'm going to tell you, you might have to make multiple offers before you finally do get a deal here in Pennsylvania, because it's July 2025 and the market here is as hot as the summer. Just keep that in mind. It is still a seller's market, meaning the sellers are in control in this market for the most part. So it's still very competitive with buyers, but it's your agent's job to get as much information as he can to relay that back to you and formulate a good strategy to help you win your bid. Well, let's say you want to bid. What's next? The first step is putting down your deposit check. So in your contract, when you made a deal, you decided how much money you're going to put in your earnest money deposit. That's typically about 1 to 5% of the deal. So if you're buying something for $300, maybe it's $3,000 to $15,000, for example. That deposit can be a personal check if your closing is longer than 30 days. Otherwise, it typically has to be a bank check. It is most often held by the seller's brokerage, but sometimes it is held by the title company. So you're going to drop that off within, typically in Pennsylvania, 5 days of going under contract on a property. Once that's down, your contract's locked together, and you're on to the next step. Now that your deposit is down, you're going to start doing your mortgage process in earnest, where you're going to give your mortgage company everything they need. This is going to be a process that's going to go through, a long period of time. It is kind of a pain in the butt, but you got to do it. You're also going to schedule your inspections if you got inspections. That inspection period in Pennsylvania is typically 10 days unless your contract specifies otherwise. So the buyer has 10 days to inspect and give a reply to the seller, and then the seller can reply back to them, and they go back and forth and negotiate for 5 days plus another 2 days. So it can be a total of 17 days. And I think a really important note is the seller cannot terminate. So whatever the buyer asks for, the seller can just say no, maybe some of that, but they can't say, hey, you asked for too much stuff, I'm out. Only the buyer's side can terminate per the contract. Next, you're going to order appraisal. Appraisal is done by your bank that you're using to get the mortgage. So the bank wants to make sure, hey, we're loaning 200 grand. This house is worth 200 grand. So they're going to send an appraiser. You're going to pay for it, usually around $550, $600, something like that these days. And the appraiser is going to go to the house for like 20 minutes. You're not usually there. And he's going to look it over, and then he's going to compare it to other properties that have sold in the area that are similar bedroom, bath, and square footage, etc. So he's going to look, determine the value, and you're going to get that back. If the value comes in below your sales price, there may be a negotiation that's going to take place between the buyer and the seller to try to figure out how do we close that gap. The seller may lower the price, the buyer may come up with some more cash, maybe a combination of both. This whole time in the background, title is going to be running. And what title does is they make sure that the house is delivered from the seller to the buyer free and clear. So the buyer's given the money, they have clean title to the house. There is an insurance policy they put in on there that says like, hey, we searched everything, thought we found everything. If we didn't, for some reason, that insurance policy should insure the buyer and clear the title or clean it up. So title is really important. That's usually, like I said, running in the background. And title also is typically going to do your closing documentation and usually going to go to the title company to close. Next, you're going to get your mortgage commitment that's going to come in, and basically the mortgage company is committing to giving you a loan based on getting a couple more docs from you and that kind of thing. Your clear to close is going to usually come a few days before closing. All right, so we're making good progress through this chart. We've got a few more items. One of them is use and occupancy, and that's going to be done by the township. It's actually the responsibility of the seller, but there may be a negotiation that takes place here where the township goes in, does an inspection, says they want this, this, and this fixed. Maybe the seller says yes, maybe they say no. They're contractually supposed to do it, but sometimes they don't always, and you got to get a temporary UNO to pass this. One of the last things you do is you're going to get your homeowner's insurance policy in place, and you're going to turn all the utilities on in your name for the day of closing. So electricity, gas, water, etc. Then you're going to do your final walkthrough. So the final walkthrough just basically means you're going to go to the house usually a day before closing or the day of closing and just make sure everything's out that's supposed to be out, all the personal property, etc. And there's no damage done to the house that wasn't there before, and you're good to close. Then you're going to walk over to the closing table. That's typically going to be held at the title company. You're going to go, you bring your license, probably a big check, and close, and congratulations, you're a homeowner. All right, everyone. I hope that was super helpful going through this process. I wanted to do what I said I promised, which is talk about the live-in flip. So when you're buying a house, you've got a huge opportunity to do a live-in flip, and I've got a whole course on that you can check out on my channel. So just make sure you subscribe to my channel and check out our live-in flip course playlist, and that'll take you step by step on how you can make $50,000 to $150,000 when you go to buy a house. I'm Rob Lawrence of VRA Realty. Feel free to reach out to me. My contact information is down below, and I'd love to talk to you. I'd love to help make you a homeowner here in the great state of Pennsylvania.